having run against so many walls and having doors smashed in my face, maybe this isn't my purpose. No one tells you that you don't even get any castings because there are so many people who want to do this. If you're not resilient, you won't last 5 minutes. This is going to be really, really difficult. Maybe that's because it was meant for that person. It's not meant for me. Maybe something else is meant for me.
Knowing what you know now, whether or not you still would do the same again.
You know what? Not fun. I can understand why it's very hard for people to ever go off antidepressants because it took a really long time to get out the other end of that. And people then tell you like, oh, maybe you need to go back on them because maybe you're still depressed. And you're like... And I feel so proud of myself and like this is an actual achievement. I've never had that once when I was trying to do acting. If you're chasing happiness, you're never going to find it.
Julia.
Hi, Ryan.
I start all of my podcasts with the exact same question because usually it sets the narrative for how the rest of the conversation is going to continue.
Okay.
That question is, are you happy?
Ooh, you know what? Right now, I'm actually quite happy. I feel like if you had asked me that like a month ago, my answer would have been very different. But I've had a good week, so yeah.
What changed?
Well, I got a job offer, as you know, and it's a really exciting time because it's it feels like this year was really, really difficult. Like a lot went on this year and it kind of like feels like I'm now at the end of that like rough period and now the good period starts, you know?
Yeah.
So,
do you think happiness is what we should chase in life?
I think if you're chasing happiness, you're never going to find it. Okay.
Why do you think that?
Because I'm actually saying this, I've read this on Pinterest. So this is not my idea. But yeah, I read a quote once and I'm totally going to butcher it, but it was something along the lines of by chasing happiness, you are making yourself aware of what you don't have, which basically then means that you will make yourself unhappy. Because you're very aware of all the things that are lacking. So in order to gain happiness, it's almost like you need to surrender and be fine with whatever. And only then will you achieve happiness.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because the chasing of happiness in itself is a negative experience in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess also endless.
Yeah. Well, I think... it's always going to be an up and down. I don't think it's possible to be happy for like all the time, forever and years and years and years. It's always going to go up and down. Yeah. And I always try to remind myself, like, even when I am really happy, I'm like, enjoy this moment because you don't know when it's going to be shit again. And it's the same way when I feel really crap. I'm like, just remind yourself it's going to be better.
I actually did a podcast a couple of weeks ago with someone who said when things are going really, really well, that is when you have to ask yourself what's next.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's just going to go downhill. I mean, those periods I think can last for a while, right? Yeah. But inevitably something's going to happen that's going to knock you off your high horse. Yeah. Being like, the sun's shining out of your butt.
So for this podcast, I have a research hypothesis. And essentially what I'm doing is talking to a bunch of different people from all different aspects with the idea to answer a certain question. And that question is, or that hypothesis is, passion equals purpose. What are your thoughts on that hypothesis?
I want to agree with it. But as someone who has a lot of passion for something...
Which is?
Or used to be acting and singing and performing. And having run against so many walls and having doors smashed in my face and it just not working out, there is a question of like, maybe this isn't actually my purpose. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I was, it was part of it was part of what got me where I am today, of course. But at the same time, like, I don't know if that's always true. I want to believe it's true, but like from personal experience, I don't know if it's true, because I think very often the things that come easiest to us can sometimes be the things that are meant to be for you.
Yep. So let's talk about your experience a bit more then. Because from what I understood, after high school, you didn't take the traditional route in the sense of going on and whatever. What did you do?
So when I was about 8, I decided I wanted to be a pop star.
Fair.
And my parents thought it was a phase, and then it wasn't a phase. After high school, I went to acting school for a year. Before that, I had also started my own, like making my own music. I had a producer, 2 actually. One when I was like 15 or 16, and then the other one when I was 18. Writing my own lyrics, like recording songs and stuff, which was a really cool experience. And then I went to acting school at the same time as I had the second producer. And it was all going very well. Then I met my now husband, quit acting school. He's Australian. I was living in Germany at the time. We had been dating for about 4 months when he asked me, do you want to move to Australia with me? And I was like, sure.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
All my friends and family were like, Jesus, you're insane. But like, oh well. I just thought, like, what's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work out, I'll just come back to Germany. Anyway, so 6 months after we met, I moved to Australia, quit acting school. And then in Australia, I tried like pursuing the acting stuff as well, did a lot of courses, learned a lot about acting. Kind of the singing kind of went on the back burner a little bit. With that said, I did audition for a few, like I dabbled in musical theatre. Let's put it that way. But I'm not a dancer, so that never really went anywhere. And yeah, I kept hustling.
Yeah.
Let's just call it that.
Yeah. In this case, for acting in particular, right?
Yeah. At some point, I kind of, because I was really confused. I was like, do I want to do singing? Do I want to do musical theatre? Do I want to do acting? And I think I was like spreading myself too thin, like half-assing all of those. And then once I decided, like, let's just focus on acting, that's when stuff actually started, like a little bit of stuff. Like, let's not get too excited about it. But like, that's when a little bit of stuff happened on the acting side, when I put all my efforts into one basket.
Yeah. What is that? Explain to me so I understand better what sort of that process of, I guess, casting, right, is, what that's like.
Well, so you see all these videos where actors are like, oh, I was going to so many castings and I never got the role, and like I was about to give up, and then my agent sent me to one last casting, and then I went.
All of a sudden it happened.
Exactly. I was in New Girl or whatever. They always tell these stories, right? The thing is, no one tells you that you don't even get any castings, because there are so many people who want to do this, and the casting agents only have so much time. So they can't see like 100 people. So they get about, and this is not an exaggeration, for every role, they get about 500 to 2,000 applications, and they might see 5 to 10. So to even be one of those 5 to 10 is like almost impossible. So that's where it starts. It's like, how do I even get seen? How do I even get to audition? And that was the most frustrating thing, I think, for me, and I know for most actors as well, is like, you call yourself an actor, but you don't even get called in for auditions. Yeah. And then when you do get an audition, usually they're within the next like 2 to 4 days, I'd say, you get sent a script, you need to learn the script, and then you rock up. Well, this is what it was like in Australia. Nowadays, it's a bit different because 80% of first round auditions are virtual. So you just send in a self-tape. But yeah, so you learn a script, either go to the audition or self-tape at home. And then if you're in person, they might give you some instructions of like how you might do it differently. They do a second take. If you do it at home, you basically just go with your gut and hope you did a good take, and then you send it off, and then you usually never hear again. Like, they never tell you when you don't get the role.
Right. You just know after a while of not hearing, well,
Exactly. Yeah. Basically, what you have to do is like you do the audition, you forget about it.
Yeah.
There's no other way to
Right.
do it, because otherwise you'll just drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
The really annoying part starts when they put you on hold for something and you're like, oh my God, I actually have a chance. And it happened to me. I was auditioning. It was like a bit part for a mini series in Australia. And they put me on hold after I had done the in-person audition for whatever dates it was. And then you wait and you like make plans. You're like, oh, I need to take that day off work or whatever. And then eventually my agent told me or called me and was like, hey, I'm really sorry. They loved you. And the casting agent thought you were the best person for the role. But the network wanted, what was her name? Samantha something, who had won the X Factor the year before. And I was like, I can't compete with that, can I?
No.
So yeah, that's usually what happens.
Yeah. What does sort of that repetitive rejection do to you as a person?
I think generally, if you're not resilient, you won't last 5 minutes. Like you have to go into the whole thing with the mindset of like, this is going to be really, really difficult. And unfortunately, most of the time it doesn't work out. And what I think it's done to me in particular, which is really horrible, but it's made me believe that nothing I will work for, I will ever achieve. Because anything I've ever achieved in my life has come easy to me. Like it was literally just like handed to me on a silver platter, and all I needed to do was grab it and like do a good job of it. But whenever I've really wanted something and like really tried and put a lot of effort into it, it's never worked out. And I think that sort of mindset of like that belief has definitely come from like trying so hard over and over again and it just never happening.
Yeah.
But it's also made me think like maybe some things just aren't meant for me, because all the good things that have ever happened literally just plopped into my lap and then I made the best of it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how I'm rolling now, where I'm like, as soon as I need to bang my head against the wall, clearly it's not meant for me. So I'm not going to like try and not continue down that path.
Yeah. Obviously, the podcast is called The Quarter Life Crisis. My reason for naming it like that is I had somewhat of a similar experience, but then more in the music side, that I tried a bunch of different stuff within music. And as you know, also there, the industry is madly saturated. And basically, thing after thing led me to deciding, okay, maybe music is not it for me after all, especially since I felt like I personally lacked certain self-belief that is required. I guess the resilience, what you already referred to. Yeah,
you do need to, like, it's very much a balance of, like, you think you're the hottest shit on earth, because if you don't think that, there's no way you can even, like, last 5 minutes. But then you also, the rejection does knock your confidence quite a lot. And you kind of, like, balance between, like, thinking I'm the best and I'm the worst.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so that sort of, that loss of my passion, I guess, is what eventually led me to this quarter life crisis moment. And on top, then finishing school was like, okay, the end of this project, at least that I'm working on, is coming to an end.
What next?
Exactly. So I guess my first question for you is, would you say you had a quarter life crisis?
I think I had multiple quarter life crises in like various stages of my life.
Yeah. What's the one that's been the biggest shaper for you, I guess?
I think when I got a full-time job last year, and then realizing this year, actually, I don't even know if that was a quarter life crisis. I think that was just the end of a really, really long process. But basically realizing, so my acting agent dropped me earlier this year in like June or July or something. And I was like, because my husband and I got married in August, and I was like, okay, I'll deal with this after the wedding. I don't have brain space to think about this right now, because even though I had a full-time job, I was still like auditioning and, you know, obviously hoping to make it big or whatever. And then after the wedding, I realized the amount of effort I would have to put in order to get a new agent would be so astronomical, and I just didn't want to do it. I was like, you know what, I'm over this. Like, this isn't acting. Acting is being with another person and like, you know, reading a script and like acting with each other on stage in front of the camera, whatever, with an audience. Me sitting at home in front of a light with a camera, that's not acting. That's not what I like. That's stupid.
Yeah.
And I'm over it. I don't want to do it anymore. So yeah, that's when I think that was the biggest realization of like, maybe this is over for now, and maybe you need to focus on more adult shit now, like your other job that I sort of like fell into, which I've done. And, you know, now this week I got a job offer that's really, really good. And I even like negotiated a little bit more, and I feel so proud of myself, and like, this is an actual achievement. I've never had that once when I was trying to do acting.
Right. So if I could give you a time machine, you go back in time and you do it all over again, would you?
Nah.
No?
Because you see, I like acting so much. It's like it brings me so much joy, and I had so many great experiences, and I probably would have gone to uni or something annoying like that, and I just never wanted to go to uni. And you know what? Where I've ended up is great.
So you would do the same again?
I mean, I would probably make some smarter choices around the acting side with like the knowledge that I have now. Because I think in the beginning I closed doors that I shouldn't have closed, because I thought, oh, there'll be loads more opportunities like this. Just then to realize, well, there's not. But like, I would never not try and pursue it, no.
Right. I guess that's the interesting part, right? Because a lot of people, I mean, you already took a much bigger step than a lot of people do to begin with. You at least tried, right? A lot of people are, you know, maybe 19 or whatever, considering starting out and simply too scared, because indeed this rejection and whatever is gonna stop you. So what I guess that's why I asked the question, because I'm interested to see if, even knowing what you know now, whether or not you still would do the same again to pursue it.
Yeah, I would. Because you never know. A lot about it is so much luck involved as well. And you never know whether you're going to be in the right time, right place. And that's it. That's your career done for you, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What is your relationship to social media?
I tried to be an influencer once, and I realized how much bloody work it is, and then I was like, no. I know it's like so important, and it's amazing like how much money you can make and all that stuff, but it's a full-time job, and I realized I don't have the passion or the patience for it. In general, I think it makes you very jealous and makes you feel worse about your life than you should feel. And it can be very dangerous, I think, for your like confidence and self-belief and stuff.
Because that's what you just mentioned is the reason why I ask it, because from what I understand, especially between acting, music, modeling, one of the common things that I see is this comparison culture and comparing yourself to others. And a typical example is that at some point with my previous business, my target group wanted me to make videos on how they can make music like someone else, right? So that they hope to break through with what someone else already made. And I'm just curious to basically understand how that is a killer, right? So obviously you also explain with going through this rejection, you have to be resilient, and how comparing yourself also in auditions and what that does to you, whether that affects you. And because I think for you to try it over 10 or like almost 10 years, no? The whole
Yeah,
acting.
probably tried, I reckon, well, probably from the age of like 18 to, 27, 28. So yeah, about 10 years.
Yeah. There's a deeper layer of passion there, right? You're not just doing it because you want to become famous.
No, you do it because honestly, I cannot for the life of me think of something that would be more fun than being on set and like filming every day.
Yeah.
Like I watch some movies and some TV shows and all I think is like, oh my God, that would have been so much fun to film.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. There's just nothing else that I could give me that much joy.
Yeah. Do you remember when that what sparked that passion?
I think I'm just a bit of an attention whore, really. I don't know. Honestly, ever since I started making up dance routines in the backyard and showed them to my parents when I was 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
Like, I think I've always had this urge to perform and move people and tell stories. And I think I really, really like telling stories and bringing stories to life and touch people with those stories.
Yeah.
And also there's a lot of freedom in letting go and being someone else and like seeing where your body takes you. And there's like a moment of like when everything you completely stop thinking as your normal self, but you kind of become, I don't want to say you become a different person because that's bullshit, but like you kind of, you surrender completely. And that's when like, it just feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you when exactly I realized that was a good feeling, but I reckon it must have been very early.
Yeah. On the topic of your parents, you mentioned that when you were like wanting to go to Australia and stuff, and also with acting in general, they wanted you to go more down the uni route, right?
I mean, I think they'd given up a long time ago that I was ever going to go to uni, to be fair.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I'd been expressing my wish to go to acting school or some kind since I was like, I don't know, 14.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That maybe makes the question redundant or something, but the ability for you to be persistent and say, no, I'm chasing my dreams, I'm doing what I love. I guess also, where does that part come from? Like, or how, no, not that. How do you tell yourself consistently, let's go, let's do this, this is what I want, when everybody else around you is telling you something else?
So I'm going to say this, and it might sound really arrogant, but I actually feel like a lot of people feel that way. I have always believed that I'm destined for great things. And I think I've now reframed that sort of mindset in like, maybe those great things aren't going to be in the acting world, but I still believe that I can contribute an enormous amount to this world. I mean, I'm not going to change the world, but like I know I can make a difference in some form, whether it's with some people in the company, whatever. And that is just like a core belief I have always had. Mm-hmm. And so when I wasn't where I wanted to be or where I felt like I should be, it felt out of balance. It felt like, oh, but I'm a bit of a loser chasing this acting thing and I haven't really achieved very much. But in my brain, I should be like here. Mm-hmm. So like, how can I get those two together?
Yep.
And I think that's why I kept trying.
Right.
But I think generally I'm very persistent with anything because I have this sunk cost mentality. I'm like, I've already put in so much work into this.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing with relationships as well.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's my husband, whether it's my friends, I'm like, I've put in so much effort into this. I'm not just going to throw it away.
Yeah.
I'm going to try everything within my power to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, all that time was wasted.
It's fascinating. Because I always, especially, again, I relate it to myself within the music. I always could admire so much that I also had friends who still haven't necessarily broken through or even able to earn consistently. I mean, I find some people call that success. I find that maybe hard because there's also people with a lot more money who are very unhappy, at least. But I always admired that persistence, that self-belief, I guess. So that's why I'm sort of on that, trying to understand where that comes from. And because I don't think it's as common for everyone as you say. I don't think everyone has that. I think actually that's one of the main things that stops a lot of people.
Yeah, maybe. I think as humans, we want to feel important. Every person wants to feel important. And I guess I just have... Maybe it's because I'm an only child and I got a lot of attention. I don't know. Maybe my parents always gave me all the attention, so I just assumed, well, this is normal. This is what the world should give me. Yeah. Well, let me tell you, it was a hard awakening. I don't know.
So one of the main questions within this whole quarter life crisis is trying to figure out what path to take. And obviously, as you said, last year for you was sort of a realigning path that you now are working a job, at least full time. Do you have any advice when it comes to figuring out what path to take? How to choose which path? Because I imagine also for yourself, right?
I've definitely made the decision. I will go the path of least resistance, because climbing up a hill all the time is really exhausting and it's not going to... for me at least, it didn't get me very far. And all the good things that have ever happened, you know how for some people opportunities just open, and then you're like, why is this so easy for them when I've been trying so hard? And I kind of feel like maybe that's because it was meant for that person, and maybe it's not meant for me. Maybe something else is meant for me.
Yeah.
And maybe all the good things that will come from my life are the things that are just doors that open, and all I need to do is step through it. And that doesn't mean that you don't work hard at the same time. You can still work hard, but you also, you surrender a little bit. Like, this word surrender is really important to me, because I truly believe that you can only be happy if you just surrender to everything that happens and just make the best of it then. But if you're constantly thinking about all the negatives and all the things that you don't have, nothing good will ever come in your life, because positives attract, positivity attracts positivity, right?
Yep. To what extent do you believe in fate?
Fate. As in, I think everything's
destined
to happen. Ooh, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to believe in fate, because that kind of means I'm just like a little pawn and everything's already planned through. I think there's still an element of you have your own choices to make. But I also think that things are definitely meant to happen the way they happen, in a way.
Yeah. Because obviously the reason why I ask is when you say you have to be open to accepting the opportunities or following the path of least resistance, to some extent that sounds like fate, right? Because you are taking the essentially the path which seems to be laid out in front of you.
Well, yeah, but you can also choose not to do that, though.
Fair.
You can choose not to go down, like not to step through the door of a job that was offered to you that you might not really want, but it was, you know, came really easily, and you're like, well, no, I don't want this. I'm going to stay in this job I really hate with a manager that I don't like because, I don't know, the money is good, or because the company's cool, or whatever. Like, I still have to have that choice. So it's not fate. It's just like I'm choosing to surrender to the possibility that whatever is going to happen is going to be okay.
Fair.
And also, I think, honestly, you're just going to be a lot happier if you surrender. Like,
okay. I'm already at my last question. And that question is, what does the future hold for Julia?
it's very scary. Future is always scary, but you don't. I mean, one thing that I've learned this year is that you do not grow if you're comfortable. And I know this is like one of those really annoying quotes that's like everywhere on Instagram.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like I've now actually understood what it means because, oh my God, this year was so, so horrible in so many different ways. Like, ugh, I can't even tell you. But boy, have I learned a lot. Like, I literally felt like my brain was exploding at some point because I was just taking in all these horrible things that have happened, like that happened. And then like, how do I deal with this, and how do I move forward and like try and make this a situation where I don't hate my life every day. So the future is very scary, but I also know that means that I'm going to like learn a lot and grow a lot. So I'm going to start this new job next year. Knock wood. Signing the contract on Monday. So yay. And then I think, honestly, there is no point in me, like, I can tell you where I want to be, but honestly, I don't think there's any point in me like even putting that out there, because chances are it's not going to happen that way. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Again, another one of those really annoying quotes, but it's true. Yeah. I truly believe that I don't have any idea what's in store for me. Fair. I have no clue, and I'm just going to ride the wave, hopefully.
Could you imagine yourself going back down the acting path?
Sure. Love that. If Netflix calls tomorrow, I will quit so quick. You have no idea.
Fair enough.
100%.
They could use some good actors.
But I don't know.
Fair.
Honestly, I feel like until I really want to, and unless an opportunity presents itself, I don't think there's any point in me wasting energy on that. What's working right now is my like non-acting career. Like, I'm weirdly good at this job. Something that I had no idea I would end up in hiring. I had no clue. I literally just fell into this job because a friend of mine worked at a company and they needed someone, and then they hired me, and now I'm here and I'm like really good at it. So like, why would I waste that? It's annoying. Sorry about that. No. Why would I waste that talent, not talent, but like those skills.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
Fair. I had another question just came to my mind about this quarter-life crisis issue. To what extent do you feel like you needed that? Would you even say that?
100%. If I wasn't unhappy, you would always just stay exactly where you are. Like, unhappiness drives you, I mean, hopefully, unless you are very depressed and don't have any motivation, which I've been there. But like, generally speaking, unhappiness drives you to try and make shit better for yourself, I think. So it's really important. And that's also, so I went off antidepressants this year, which has also made this year very difficult, because when your brain gets used to a chemical like that, it literally took me months for my brain to like regulate itself again. It was like all sorts of horrible. But last year I realized I was so content with everything. Like, no matter what, I was coasting through. And I didn't have the drive to want more, because I think the antidepressants just gave me little, gave me serotonin that made me think everything's fine, which is lovely, obviously. But at the same time, like, I lost the drive that I personally really like about myself. It's like, where else can Julia go? Like, what else can Julia learn? Because Julia is destined for great things, right? And now that I'm off them again, of course, you feel your feelings a lot more. But I think that's so important, because if you don't, you're never going to get out of where you are.
Yeah. What made you decide to stop them?
So I started taking them during Corona, when I had no income whatsoever. And I was like, Jesus, I'm 26 years old. And I can't pay my rent. What the heck? Like, this isn't good. This is not where I thought my life would be. And you start going down this spiral, and I ended up basically literally not even, like, everything was just so hard. I couldn't get out of bed. Nothing made me happy anymore. Everything felt like a chore. You literally, like, couldn't even do the washing. Like, it wasn't fun.
Would you have called it a depression?
Sorry?
Would you have called it a depression?
Yeah. But I've kind of had depressed, like, I think it runs in my family a little bit. So I know that I have a tendency to be anxious and be depressed. But it's never been that bad like it was at that point. Like, I just didn't want to do anything, really. I was like, what's the point of anything? And then I was actually in therapy at the time, and she was like, your brain isn't thinking rationally right now. You need help. And so she put me on antidepressants. And for me personally, they worked a treat. Literally within the first pill, within 2 hours, I was like another person, which usually that's not the case. Like, most of the time it takes like 2 to 6 weeks for them to work properly. But for me, it was very, very quick. But earlier this year, I was like, I'm not in that position anymore. I don't have like financial hardship like I did then, where I literally didn't even want to buy my deodorant when it wasn't on sale. And everything else was going okay. So why would I want to be dependent on a medication that does something in my brain? I want to have control of myself. And so, that's when I went off them. Not fun. I can understand why it's very hard for people to ever go off antidepressants, because it took a really long time to get out the other end of that. And people then tell you like, oh, maybe you need to go back on them because maybe you're still depressed. And you're like, but I wasn't depressed. It was just my brain readjusting. And that just took a really long time.
I think that's also quite strong, though. Like, it takes strong character. The easy route there would be to say,
I'll go back on them. Yeah.
I'll stay on there.
But I think it's that persistence thing again.
Yeah.
And the lost cost thing. I was like, I've already wasted 3 months, like, struggling after going off them.
Yeah.
I need to stick this out now.
Was there anything in particular that made it feel so hard?
So at the beginning, there were like the physical symptoms. So like, didn't sleep at all, like 2-3 hours a night. You felt constantly sick. I couldn't focus. Like, I would read something at work and it just wouldn't go into my brain. I had no capacity to concentrate for weeks and weeks. And then the mental thing as well. Like, my brain was such a roller coaster. I would have mood swings like 5 times a day to the extent of being like almost like bipolar-ish happiness to being so distraught. And anxious and depressed within the same day. It was wild. And then also your capacity to deal with stress. And this year was very stressful for all sorts of reasons. But I was not able to cope I think it would have been difficult for anyone, but especially coming off medication that basically gave your brain, serotonin. It made it very, very hard.
It sounds like an addiction, like you were in some sort of rehab.
Almost. They say it's not non-addictive, but I think for me and for other people, I have a friend who went off them and she didn't experience a side effect as badly as I did. So I think it definitely depends on the person and what they're going through in life as well. Like, this year was just like rough. But for me, it was very, very hard. which actually kind of makes sense because they worked really quickly for me as well. So clearly I'm very sensitive to medication like that.
I want to thank you for your story. I think you
Cool.
are very strong and a very strong character as well. I can appreciate that. I was also very excited about this conversation because it was the first time that I had someone who was still working on trying to chase her dreams and sort of find that angle and figure out whether or not this whole chasing your passion is as rainbows and sunshine as some other people make it out to be.
And here I am telling you I have a full-time job and quit acting, so sorry about that.
Well, no, that's exactly that. But what you did say, and that stands out to me, is that even if you could do it all over again, you would do exactly the same. And I think that is the more important part of it. So yeah, thank you for your time and your story.